but I absolutely believe that you can teach someone to be more creative. You take what they have, you take that spark, and then you push it. You ask them questions about where they could take the story. One of the most important lessons that I learned in my creative writing classroom days, like as a student, was don't always just settle for the first place your mind goes with a story.
What does baseball have to do with writing stories that reach millions of readers? Well, for best-selling author Alan Gratz, it turns out the answer is everything. In this episode of Shifting Schools, we step onto the creative field with an author whose books have stayed at the very top of the bestseller list for over 5 years. Alan is going to share with us his insight into how interdisciplinary learning can really spark engagement, his thoughts on how creativity can, in fact, be taught, and why collaboration matters more today than ever before. If you believe that storytelling belongs in every classroom, or if you are looking for ways to help students see creativity as a muscle and not a mystery, this conversation is for you. Before we bring Alan Gratz onto the Shifting Schools podcast, we do have a quick word from our show sponsor. Hey listeners, you know that when we talk to you about a show partner, we have taken great time and care to make sure that we are talking to you about partnerships that we use and trust ourselves. That's why I'm so excited to remind you of the incredible folks behind Poll Everywhere, the student response system that's trusted by over 1 million educators to transform lectures into interactive learning experiences. Poll Everywhere has just launched a brand new and improved version, and from experience, I can tell you it's a game changer. You can create engaging polls in seconds with their AI-powered tools, which integrate seamlessly with your LMS and make every class and conversation just a little more interactive without the hassle. Whether you're teaching a gigantic lecture hall or you've got a small group, Poll Everywhere makes that engagement faster, simpler, smarter. If you are ready to try it out, you can get $25 off with special code 25OFF. That's 25, capital O, capital F, capital F, at the link in our show notes. That promo code will be there where you can sign up, get ready to try it, and save a little bit from our friends at Poll Everywhere. And now, back to the show. And with that, welcome to the Shifting Schools podcast, legendary author Alan Gratz. Alan, it's such an honor to be speaking with you. I meant to look this up. I am wondering, how many authors on the planet Earth can say they've had a bestseller sit on that list for 5 years? I don't know if you know how many have managed to do it.
Don't know. It is a rare thing, I will tell you, and it is something that I never take for granted. It's amazing to have that longevity on the list. When I see the few books I know that have had that same time on the list are like classics, and I'm thrilled by that. And I mean, if that's the way refugee is thought of in the future, long after I'm gone, that is an amazing legacy to leave.
It absolutely is. And I have kind of a curveball of a question. I always think that people's hobbies or outside interests have a way of seeping into the work we do. And I am wondering, I've heard you're a huge baseball fan. I hope, your team is in the playoffs.
They still are.
I'm wondering, okay, good. At the time of this recording.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm wondering, when you think about your work as an accomplished writer, you've won so many different awards. Is there anything about your love for baseball that you think is an influencing factor on how you approach your art and craft?
So it's very funny that you asked this, because my very first book was called Samurai Shortstop. It was a baseball book, but it was also historical. It was about kids in 1890s Tokyo, Japan, learning to blend Bushido, the samurai way of the warrior, with their baseball practices, to sort of prove to the main character's dad that there's room for ancient Japanese tradition in this new and changing Japan. Okay, so when I was thinking about writing this, I also thought about structuring it kind of like baseball, like a baseball diamond. And I thought about breaking the story up into, home plate to first base is your first act. And then first base to second base to third base, those two links are your middle of your book, your second act. And then going from third base to home is your third act. And I actually think about stories that way, especially with that same distance in mind. By that I mean the first fourth of my book is actually Act One, where the middle two fourths, or like one half of the book, is that second act, and then I want to have another short third act, that third base to home, and it needs to be like you're running home, like you got to be getting there pretty fast, like a fast start and a fast ending, and then making your way around the bases in as much time as you can, in as short a time as you can, but not quite as quick as the other two. I actually have thought about that as a great, metaphor for how to outline a book. And then later on in my novel, The Brooklyn Nine, another book about baseball and history, I actually broke that one into 9 different innings. So the innings were each 3 chapters long for the 3 outs that you get in each inning. And each inning, each little story had a new kid in the story, and it was like a different batter. It's like the 9 different batters in a lineup. And I've actually played around with taking baseball conventions and putting them into my books. So it's a better question than you even knew.
Wow. Yes. I feel like listeners, you probably think we planned that. I swear we did not. That's incredible. Yeah. You are a former educator. You've also studied creative writing formally. And I'm wondering, I think I hear people say a lot this idea that creativity cannot be taught. I kind of disagree with that. I feel like you're kind of like living proof. Can you talk a little bit about like how actually studying creative writing has, of course, been, I'm guessing, a very foundational part of your achievements?
Sure. I loved writing as a kid. And so I came to it the way a lot of writers do, just playing around with my own stories, watching movies, reading books, reading comic books, watching plays, and absorbing those stories and then wanting to tell my own stories. But I absolutely believe that you can teach someone to be more creative. You take what they have, you take that spark, and then you push it. You ask them questions about where they could take the story. One of the most important lessons that I learned in my creative writing classroom days, like as a student, was don't always just settle for the first place your mind goes with a story. Like write that down, but then ask yourself, where else could this story go? And take it to 6 different places if you can. Like take it many different places, and then look for the one that's the most exciting to you, the one that feels new and different, and also doesn't paint you into a corner. Obviously, there's sometimes where like a meteor hits and everybody dies, and you're like, well, great, that's the end of the story. But so you don't want to kill everybody off or have your main character die, unless it's a ghost story, I guess. But you've got to, you have to see a path out from the direction you take, but can you take the most interesting path, the most surprising path? And I think that is something that can be taught, is to not settle for the first creative idea that you have, but to explore multiple options for one choice in a story, pick it, and then when you get to where that takes you next, explore multiple options again.
So I have to ask as a follow-up, with war games, to what extent did you take your own advice? Is this a book that is not going after that first creative path you found?
So for this one, yeah, it isn't, because I wanted to write a book about the 1936 Berlin Olympics. And obviously the big stories there are the sports stories. You've got Jesse Owens winning the 4 gold medals. You've got the boys in the boat, being underdog gold medal champions in rowing. You've got other things happening around the Olympics that are all sports related. And being a sports fan, I read all about the Olympics and thought, well, what story can I tell about the Olympics that is sports focused? And I thought, well, does it have to just be a sports story? Like that was the first thing I thought was, how do I just put an athlete here and what's their story, right? What is the kid's story here at the Olympics? But then I thought, well, what are other ways I could explore the Olympics and take this in a very different direction? So I started brainstorming about things that are Olympic, like gold, like winning gold medals. And I thought, well, what if somebody's also there like trying to steal gold? Like, what if I used gold in two different ways? I used gold, you're pursuing it on a sports level, but also maybe trying to steal it from someplace. And then where can I steal it from? And how do I connect? Like, do I do a heist story and a sports story? And it was really pushing myself out of just writing a sports story that made me see that I could do these two things and combine them and have all kinds of ways that I was playing with the idea of taking home the gold.
That's fantastic. I love that. And, Alan, you are on tour, it feels like for the foreseeable future.
It does feel that way to me too.
Listeners of this show are in education and, maybe some of them are lucky enough to have you coming in for a school visit, or they might connect with you to do one virtually. Because you have that educator background, I'm wondering if something comes to mind. You're thinking, you know what, when I do school visits, I wish more schools invited me to do this. Is there sort of a workshop or a conversation, or what you're talking about with your passion for sports really overlapping with your writing? I feel like this is that interdisciplinary mindset that we want learners to have. So does something come to mind where you're saying, invite me in and let's do this?
So this book has the sports and history connection, and I've written other books that have a history and a math connection and a history and a science connection. And what I would really love to see is when I would go into schools, all the English teachers and all the librarians would be like, hey, it's Alan Gratz, and they'd be celebrating me. And all the other teachers were just like there to bring their kids in during the time when I was speaking to the whole group, right? They weren't invested, except that it was a period they didn't have to teach. And and what I would love is if, and a couple of schools have done this in the past, if they can incorporate all of the teachers at a grade level who are doing different subjects, find a way to make my books apply to those different subjects so that by the time I get there, they haven't just talked about my book in the English classroom. They've talked about it in all their classes for like just a week ahead of time. It doesn't have to be like a whole semester or anything, but just find a way to bring it in. If it's a baseball story, let's talk about statistics, right? Let's talk about how do you calculate an ERA and what is a batting average and how is that calculated and what is an on-base percentage? Like that's all math stuff that you can do. If you're a history teacher, you can talk about the history of baseball. It goes back to the 1830s. Like Walt Whitman was watching the original Brooklyn Superbas play baseball in the 1830s. So you can bring in all this history, like all through the Civil War, baseball's evolution through there and all through the present day, the women's leagues in the 1940s when the men were away during World War II. There's so many angles into history through sports. So like, if I write a book that has sports in it, there's history you can bring in, there's science you can bring in, there's math you can bring in. And of course, if I'm writing a historical novel already, you can tie that in. But the sports angle could be something that the gym teachers or are working with their kids on. So the game, for example, like how they used to play baseball before the rules became what we know today. I think there's a lot of ways to do interdisciplinary things with books. And I wish I saw more schools do that.
It's music to my ears. I totally agree with you. And I would even say, for older students, if it's a school where there's psychology, I think it would be really interesting to have you talk about how, you managed to get into with war games. You've got a protagonist who, Alan, I know your year of birth, but it's not exactly the same year of birth as your protagonist. Nope. And so what are you doing to kind of be able to get in that mindset in a way that's so authentic that it really does value the readers who are picking up this book and feel like Alan really gets inside the mind of that character? How do you do that?
Well, thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. No, it's a challenge because plot and structure come more easily to me than character building. And like I start with story, and then I think about who my character will be to run around in that story. But there's a couple of things that I'm always looking at with character, and that is number one, like what did they want out of this moment in time? Like just because I'm writing a book about two kids who are right in the middle of Pearl Harbor when the attack begins, and yes, their number one motivation is survive. But what were they planning to do before that? Like, who were they before the attack? What is it that they want? And how does the attack on Pearl Harbor affect how they get what they want, or does it keep them from getting what they want, right? So when I think about characters, I'm both thinking about how they're going to interact in the moment in time and history that I'm writing about. But I'm also trying to think really carefully about who those kids were before we meet them. And one of the things I've started to do as a writer, like second half of my career, really thinking about this, is I try to come up with the best story to tell me, to explain to a reader who this character is before we meet them. What's the one big thing that happened to this kid before this book? This book, hopefully, if I've done my job right, will be the biggest thing that ever happens to this kid. Young readers will often say, when are you going to write a sequel to this book? And I'm like, I'm not, because there's nothing bigger that's ever going to happen to this person than what just happened, right? If there is, then maybe I should have written that book first. But so they're going to go through the biggest event of their life. But prior to that, there was some big thing that happened. They might have been attacked by a dog, and now they're frightened of going into dangerous situations. They might have lost a parent or a grandparent, and they're afraid of losing another one. They might have been bullied, and they are afraid of having that happen again. And whatever it is that they went through that defined who they are, of course, as an author, I'm going to put them through hell. I'm going to make sure that in the third act, they have to overcome that. I'm going to make sure that what they have to do during this book is overcome that thing that happened in the past and have them succeed because they've overcome that previous challenge. So a roundabout answer to your question, but I'm trying to always think about who they are internally, and those touchstones, like being bullied is a thing that happens throughout time. You don't have to live in the 1930s for that to happen. You don't have to live in the 1990s for that to happen. It's happened all the time, right? So I try to think of touchstones for kids that are universal and timeless to also fit in with the things that are happening that are super timely. The attack on Pearl Harbor, the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the Battle of Okinawa, whatever it is I'm writing about, that's the new part for the reader. The part that they already know is being bullied, or worrying about their parents splitting up, or all these different things that kids have gone through themselves, regardless of the era.
I have to ask in closing then, I feel like what you're talking about is writing from that place of just our deep humanity, that regardless of context, these are things that we can really feel. And as you were talking that through, I'm thinking, this is an author who is just so relentlessly curious about the human condition. If I'm wrong, this is going to be a real short answer on your part.
No, you're right. I appreciate it. It's very nice of you to say, but I would have to agree, I hope. Yeah.
Well, then my question to you is, how do you feed that curiosity? What is it that you're doing to, keep that alive? Because I mean, clearly I would say this is a part of your recipe for success. And I'm wondering, for somebody who is saying, I could probably be a little bit more curious about this, can you recommend something that actionably, practically someone could do?
Well, this is going to be a sort of an easy answer, but read a lot of books from perspectives that are not your own. Read a lot of books by authors who don't look like you or sound like you or from the same place as you or have the same religion as you or whatever. Like it's those different points of view that I'm always trying to capture. Like kids will say, when are you going to write a book about you? And about you. And I'm like, I'm never going to write a book about myself. Why would I write a book about myself? I want to learn more about other people. I want to learn more about other places and other times and other cultures and other communities. Like that to me is the the curiosity that keeps me going. I always want to read about something new. And so for me, it's magazine articles, it's newspaper articles, it's podcasts, it's books. It's something where I'm hearing the voices of people from a different time or a different place or a different background, and absorbing those and trying to see the breadth of the human condition rather than my own. When I look in the mirror, I know my own. I'd like, I know it too well. But I would love to know everybody else's. And so part of it is like when I'm at events, just chatting with people and getting to know people. They're always telling me, sign faster, get through the line. And I'm like, no, I want to talk to people. I want to see people and meet people. And that to me is just something that's just baked in. It's what I do. And I think that it comes through in my books. At least I hope it does.
Oh, 100%. I love that. Thank you for leaving us with that as some parting wisdom, because it's true. Like your library card can also function as a passport.
It's totally
I love
true.
that.
Oh
right?
my gosh, it's totally true. Yeah.
Well, Alan, congratulations. You've got, again, 2 books coming out simultaneously. We wish you the best of luck with the tour and can't wait to see what else you get curious about in the future.
Thanks. And thanks for all the terrific questions.
Hey there, dedicated listener. If you've made it this far, we know you're passionate about shifting the way education works. And Tricia and I appreciate you. If you loved what you heard today, we'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to rate and review Shifting Schools wherever you listen to podcasts. Those ratings help us reach even more educators just like you. And if you know someone who could benefit from these conversations, please share this episode with them. Just one person. Think of the impact we can make together. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter for even more great content. And if you haven't already, join us at Camp Shifting Schools, where the conversations keep going long after the podcasts end. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and thank you for being part of Shifting Schools.